5935. Vote required for adoption of an individual rule. If a standing rule of a convention is voted on individually, the vote necessary for its adoption is in some cases 2/3 and in others a majority, depending on the nature of the rule. 1. Convention standing rules requiring a 2/3 vote for adoption, even individually, are, in principle, distinguished by the same characteristics as provisions which, in an ordinary local society or assembly, would need a 2/3 vote to be placed in effect for the duration of a meeting or session, or would require adoption as a special rule of order to continue in force from session to session. See 2. An example would be a rule limiting the time allowed for debate. Rules in this class are described by the term parliamentary standing rules in a convention, as used in this book. 2. A standing rule is individually adoptable by a majority vote in a convention if it does not fall in class 1 above, and consequently could be adopted in a local assembly as an ordinary standing rule. See 2. Examples of such convention rules would be those relating to the wearing of badges or to the format in which written reports or resolutions shall be submitted. 5936. Vote required to amend or rescind a convention standing rule. To amend or rescind a standing rule of a convention requires a 2/3 vote or the vote of a majority of all the delegates or other, quote, voting members of the convention who have been registered, except that a rule individually adoptable by a majority vote can be amended or rescinded by a majority vote after notice on at least the preceding day. 5937. Suspension of a convention standing rule. Any standing rule of a convention, except one prescribing the parliamentary authority, can be suspended for a particular specified purpose by a majority vote, even if the rule required a 2/3 vote for its adoption. Under such a suspension, however, the applicable rules in the parliamentary authority prescribed by the bylaws or by a rule of the convention come into force, as if the standing rule had not been adopted. To suspend a convention standing rule and also the general parliamentary rule normally applying to the same situation requires a 2/3 vote, just as to suspend the general rule when no standing rule is involved. 25. No standing rule of a convention can be suspended for the remainder of the session, and no standing rule which has only a single application can be suspended, since this would be equivalent to rescinding the rule and the case would have to be treated accordingly. 5938. Sample set of convention standing rules. The standing rules of a convention must vary with its size, type, and responsibilities. While it is not possible to frame model rules which are universally applicable, the following sample set illustrates the nature of the standing rules adopted by many conventions. Standing rules of the blank, convention of blank. 5939. Rule 1A. The Credentials Committee, directly after the opening ceremonies of the first business meeting, 4, shall report the number of delegates and alternates registered as present with proper credentials and shall make a supplementary report after the opening exercises at the beginning of each day that business continues. B. A member registered as an alternate may, upon proper clearance by the Credentials Committee, be transferred from alternate to delegate at any time during the continuance of business meetings. 5940, Rule 2. For admission to the Assembly Hall, to facilitate identification and seating, members, alternates, and others shall be required to wear the badge issued by the Credentials Committee upon registration. 5941, Rule 3. A resolution offered by an individual member shall be in writing, signed by the maker and the seconder, each of whom shall be a voting member of the convention, and shall be sent directly to the desk of the recording secretary. 5942, Rule 4. A. All resolutions except those proposed by the Executive Board or Board of Directors, Board of Managers, etc., or by committees, and all recommendations made in reports of officers or committees of the convention that are not in the form of resolutions shall be referred without debate to the Resolutions Committee. Resolutions proposed by the Executive Board or by committees shall be presented by the board or proposing committee directly to the convention. B. Each member who offers a resolution shall be given an opportunity to explain it to the Resolutions Committee if he so requests. C. The Resolutions Committee shall prepare suitable resolutions to carry into effect recommendations referred to it, and shall submit to the convention with the committee's own recommendation as to appropriate action these and all other resolutions referred to the committee, except questions which the committee by a vote of 2/3 of its members may decide not to report. D. The convention by a majority vote may suspend this Rule 4 and may immediately consider a question, or may order the Resolutions Committee to report a question at a certain time, even if the committee has voted not to report it. 5943. Rule 5. No member shall speak in debate more than once on the same question on the same day, or longer than 2 minutes, without permission of the convention granted by a 2/3 vote without debate. 5944. Rule 6. All reports and other material for the permanent record or printed proceedings shall be in typing and immediately on presentation shall be sent to the recording secretary. 5945. Rule 7. Nominations for each office to be filled by the convention shall be limited to one nominating speech of 3 minutes and one seconding speech of 1 minute for each nominee. 5946. Rule 8. Notices for announcement to the convention shall be in writing, signed by the person or a proper representative of the persons under whose authority the announcement is issued, and shall be sent to the desk of the recording secretary. 5947. Rule 9. The rules contained in the current edition of Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, shall govern the convention in all cases to which they are applicable and in which they are not inconsistent with the bylaws of the society or federation, association, etc., and these standing rules. Program Committee. 5948. The Program Committee plans and submits the proposed schedule of meetings proceedings, and special events of the convention. When the program is adopted by the voting body with or without amendment, it becomes the order of business of the entire convention session. 41. The program also commonly includes, interwoven throughout the convention timetable, a series of addresses, forums, workshops, exhibits, tours, and other activities designed for membership training, motivational, or entertainment value. 49. Responsibilities. The nature of a convention program committee's responsibilities is considerably more complex than for a committee of the same name in a local society that includes a, quote, program as part of each meeting. The overall program must cover all aspects of the society's work and commitments on the level at which the convention is held, district, state, national, etc. Reviewing the period since the preceding convention and anticipating the course of the society until the next convention. In addition to enabling the convention to handle all business that it should consider within the time available, the program should be of such nature as to stimulate each delegate to an evaluation of the society's policies, accomplishments, and opportunities, inasmuch as benefit from the convention to the general membership may depend largely on the impression that each local president or delegate transmits to the unit he represents. 5950. The program committee usually begins work soon after the preceding convention closes, and its duties continue throughout the convention that it plans, so that it functions as virtually a standing committee of the organization. The program committee should work in close contact with the president and the parliamentarian. 5951. Planning the program. Although the program must come before the convention for adoption and can be amended by it, many details must be decided far ahead. Prior to the convention, the program committee must have the authority, sometimes with designated members of the executive committee or board as advisors, and often acting in cooperation with the convention arrangements committee, to engage outside speakers or entertainers to work out an order of business allotting appropriate amounts of time to each subject, and to make all necessary advance arrangements. 5952. Some societies send a tentative skeleton program to the constituent unit several weeks beforehand as part of a printed call to convention. The complete program that the committee expects to recommend should be printed at the latest practical time for handing to each person as he registers at the convention. 5953. The order of business for the complete series of a convention's business meetings normally includes, in expanded form, the elements of the one followed in ordinary meetings of the society's constituent units. 41. In the case of the convention, however, greater detail and precision are necessary for two principal reasons. 1. Adherence to a prearranged schedule is imperative if the convention is to complete its work, timing being an especially important factor if there are to be features carried by radio and television at particular hours, addresses by government officials, or appearances by professional artists. 2. Each member has the right to know at which meeting and at what approximate time a particular matter can be expected to come before the convention, so that he may avoid absence from the hall during important debate or votes. 5954. Some organizations divide the printed convention program into two parts, the first of which gives the times and places of special events, and for each business meeting, only the hours of the call to order, adjournment, and any scheduled recesses. The second part, listing the items or classes of business set for each meeting, is then known as the agenda. 41. 5955. While it is not possible to set out a model program that would be suitable for all conventions, the following principles are commonly applicable. 1. Notice of the times of registration should be given early, general distribution by mail or other means, and should also be printed in the convention program. Handing out, with the program, a schedule of pre-convention meetings of the board and of committees is often advisable, although the persons directly concerned with these meetings may need to be separately informed at an earlier time. 2. When the invocation is offered, the national anthem is played or sung, and the Pledge of Allegiance is recited in opening ceremonies. They should always be in that order. That is, the invocation first and the pledge last. 3. If there is an address of welcome, often given by a local public official at the opening of the convention, it should, as a matter of courtesy, be followed by remarks of acknowledgement and appreciation by the presiding officer or designee on behalf of the organization. 4. For each meeting, the program should specify the hour of opening and closing, and the program or the agenda should specify the order in which the subjects or classes of subjects assigned to that meeting are to come up. The extent to which such classes are subdivided should be guided by the particular conventions and probable timing problems of the individual convention. Sufficient time should be allotted for thorough consideration of each important policy question that is expected to come before the convention. For such an item of business, it is frequently advisable to set a particular hour, which automatically makes the matter a special order unless otherwise specified. See 41, 58 through 59. Listed subjects for which no hour is specified are general orders for the meeting to which they are assigned. 5. Reports of officers are commonly presented in the order in which the officers are listed in the bylaws. The president, reporting first, unless it is the desire or practice of the organization to vary from such an order. Action on the report of the auditors should immediately follow the treasurer's report. Often reports of officers that are for information only and do not require action by the convention are printed and distributed in advance. In such a case, it may not be necessary to have the report read. The chair can simply pause for any questions by delegates to the reporting officer, and the reporting officer can make additional comments on his report at that time. The report of the board, if any, usually should follow the reports of officers. 6. Reports of committees that are for information only and that do not require action by the convention should, as far as possible, be brought up in succession at the same point in the order of business. Time can frequently be saved by reproducing and distributing these reports in advance, in which case it may be unnecessary to read them aloud to the convention. The chair can then simply call the name of each committee in sequence, pausing for any questions. The chairman of any committee can be permitted to make additional comments upon his committee's report at that time. 7. The report of a committee having a resolution or other motion to offer can be received at any appropriate time, but it should usually be before the report of the resolutions committee. 8. A time for announcements should immediately precede the adjournment of each meeting of the convention. 9. Beginning with the second day of the convention, unless a rule or resolution is adopted providing for the approval of the minutes of the entire convention by the board or a committee, the minutes of the preceding day's meetings are read immediately after any opening ceremonies at the first meeting of each day. Authority to approve such minutes is then usually delegated to the board or to a special committee by means of a standing rule of the convention or an adopted resolution introduced by the resolutions committee. 10. Business unfinished at the end of a day normally is taken up after the reading of the minutes or after the opening of the meeting, if the minutes are not read, at the resumption of business the next day, provided the program makes no special provision for unfinished business on that day and there is no conflict with a special order. If unfinished business is not listed as such in the program each day, the planned timing should nevertheless allow for it. A listed heading of, quote, unfinished business, end quote, should then be provided near the end of the last business meeting and at any point where it is advisable because special orders have been scheduled early in the day. See also 41. 11. Nominations and the election of officers should take place relatively early in the convention, if possible, so that there will be time to complete balloting if more than one ballot must be taken. 12. If there is to be a formal installation of officers, this ceremony is often made a part of a closing banquet meeting at which any presentations of gavels, pins, awards, or the like are also made. 59-56. It is often advisable to schedule a meeting of the executive body or board of the association a day after the close of the convention, asking the board members and other necessary personnel to remain in the convention city for this purpose. If such a meeting is to be held, its time and place may be announced in the printed convention program. 59-57. Adoption of the convention program. The program is the President's guide as to the order of business during the initial proceedings, even before it has been formally adopted by the convention. Directly after the adoption of the standing rules, the report of the program committee is presented, normally by the committee chairman, somewhat as follows, quote, Mr. President, a printed copy of the program as proposed by the program committee is in the hands of each registrant for the convention. By direction of the committee, I move the adoption of the program as printed, end quote. If the chairman or other person presenting the report is not a voting member of the convention, he omits the motion for adoption. For procedure in such a case, see 59-12. 59-58. If last-minute changes in the program have become necessary, the chairman can make his report by saying, quote, Mr. President, because of, briefly indicating reasons, the program committee recommends the following modifications in its proposed program, which has been printed and placed in the hands of each registrant for the convention, clearly stating each change with reference to page and line in the printed program. By direction of the program committee, I move that with these changes the printed program be adopted, end quote. This motion is debatable and amendable. A majority vote adopts the program, even if it contains special orders. While the making of a special order requires a 2/3 vote under ordinary circumstances, The situation is different in the case of a convention program, where the special order is part of a complete order of business being adopted for the current session. 5959. To change the program after its adoption requires a 2/3 vote or the vote of a majority of all the delegates or other, quote, voting members, end quote, of the convention who have been registered, or unanimous consent, which can usually be obtained with no difficulty in cases where a departure from the program is justified. Thus, an affirmative vote to adopt the program cannot be reconsidered. See 458 through 63. See also Program 4136 and Taking Up Business Out of Its Proper Order 4137 through 39. Changing the program to add additional meetings within the same session requires such a vote, except that during the last meeting scheduled by the program, an additional meeting may be set by majority vote through the use of the motion to fix the time to which to adjourn. 22. Any proposed changes, except those to which there is obviously no reasonable alternative, are best referred to the program committee. The committee can recommend changes if and when needed while the convention is in progress, but neither the presiding officer nor the program committee is free to alter the program as adopted, which only the convention can do. 5960. For parliamentary rules applying at the expiration of the time allotted to a subject and procedure at scheduled times of adjournment, see 18.8, 21.10 through 12, 21.14, and 41.65 through 70. Convention Arrangements Committee, 5961. The complex arrangements necessary to a convention generally require the coordination of many additional details that are outside the province of any of the other committees mentioned in this chapter. In the simplest case, a convention arrangements committee is appointed, usually by the board at the convention level. Most often the committee's membership is largely made up of members of the constituent society or societies acting as a convention hosts. It should, however, include persons who have had experience in similar work at prior conventions. In cases where there has been competition between cities for the convention site, it is often well to place on this committee local members who were instrumental in obtaining the selection of their city. 5962. The Convention Arrangements Committee may be empowered to consult experts who may include professional convention managers. Assistance frequently is obtainable also from staff members of hotels where conventions are held and from convention bureaus in many cities. 5963. Depending on the size and duration of the convention, duties ordinarily assigned to the Convention Arrangements Committee are sometimes delegated to subcommittees or even distributed among separate committees. At the outset, the convention headquarters must be selected and advance arrangements made concerning room accommodations and in as many hotels or motor inns as may be necessary. The committee may work with the Credentials Committee in coordinating room reservations for delegates with their registration for the convention. While the Program Committee may arrange for all speakers and entertainment, details relating to the overnight and other accommodations for these guests are usually a responsibility of the Convention Arrangements Committee. Ensuring that dignitaries and honored guests are met at the airport or other point of arrival may also be one of the latter committee's functions. 5964. Printed or reproduced material assembled in cooperation with the program committee for distribution to the delegates in advance of the convention should include directions for getting to the convention by various means of transportation available, and information about the locality, points of interest, restaurants, entertainment, tours arranged by the program committee, and parking facilities for those driving to the convention. 5965. Careful attention should be given to seating arrangements within the hall, voting members always being located in a separate section if other persons are assigned seating space on the convention floor. Pages, messengers, ushers, and doorkeepers who are essential to the good order of all but the smallest conventions should be trained to perform their duties in a calm and courteous manner. During the convention, liaison should be maintained with the program committee to ensure, for example, proper seating on the platform, as the needs may change from meeting to meeting. 5966. The staffing of an information desk throughout the convention may lie within the province of the Convention Arrangements Committee, together with additional functions in the areas of communications and public relations. If the meetings are to be covered by the press, the representatives of the various media must be kept informed of developments and provided with an area on the floor near the platform or in some other point of vantage in the hall. It is often helpful to have facilities for typing and copying close at hand, as well as for the distribution of literature. In very large conventions, it is wise to investigate existing telephone and other communication facilities and to provide for their augmentation if necessary. Resolutions Committee. 5967. The Resolutions Committee, also sometimes called the Reference Committee, or in certain cases described below, the Platform Committee, has as its basic purpose the screening of all original main motions, 10, that have not been screened by another committee and that come or are to come before the convention. It is usually not intended to require purely formal or incidental main motions to be submitted to the Resolutions Committee, or to refer to it resolutions